All right. Well, folks, welcome back to another episode of Be Your Brand. And I was just telling my good friend here, Michael Fleischner, who's in the room. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
I had to ensure that you knew which show you were on because Entrepreneur Circle has been around for about 6-7 years. All types of business owners, all types of people. But this one in particular, I wanted you to be on, Be Your Brand, which is all about building brands, building personal brands. You and I talk about this stuff a lot. You have a wonderful, powerful personal brand, which we'll get into in a second. But those who don't know Michael Fleischner, he's an entrepreneur. He is a movie producer. We were talking a little bit about him being an extra in movies. He's a speaker. You got to look for his TEDx. We'll put that in the show notes. He's an author. He's also an investor and the founder and CEO of Big Fin SEO and the Freelance Training Academy. We're going to get into all these things, brother. Thank you so much for being here and jamming with me live in studio.
I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So conversation about all things. Let's just start somewhere. The fact that we met and we're local, like that's crazy, right? Do you want to share a little bit of like the kismet there, but not necessarily about me, but about how you came to be into Jamie O'Connor's world, where that's our mutual friend.
Yes. Shout out, Jamie.
Yeah. Shout out to Jamie. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the road leading up to, and
so I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about, and you said kismet, it's so true. I feel like we are all on a journey and some things just happen that we think are by accident, but I think everything has a purpose and everything happens as it's supposed to. So I am part of a networking group called the Bellwether Alliance, and it's a phenomenal group. I encourage people to look it up online and see if it's something you'd be interested in. But ultimately, as I've done things with this community, I've gotten some amazing opportunities. And one of those opportunities was to speak at an event in Carlsbad, California, which is beautiful, by the way. I don't know if you've ever been there. No. Absolutely beautiful. And at the intermission of this event, I'm outside, I'm hanging on the deck or whatever was going on there, and struck up a conversation with a number of people. Jamie O'Connor happened to be one of those people. We did not know each other before then, but we hit it off. We're having a conversation. Of course, we asked each other, where are you from? And when I told her that I was in central New Jersey, like the lights went on and she said, oh, I know somebody in central New Jersey, which like never happens, right? We know being from the state. And the long and the short of it was that she connected the two of us. Yeah. And it turns out that we have had, I think, very similar experiences, especially in the podcasting, digital marketing space, networking community. And that's really how it came together.
What's wild about that story is, and it's all leading towards something, folks. The idea that business owners, especially in our little market here in Robbinsville, although we have businesses that service nationwide, global, but locally, it's hard to find people that have built a personal brand, speaking on stages, been on podcasts, have books, all those things. And you and I are the same generation. I think we're like a year apart. So maybe that's why we knew to build those things. I don't know, right? A little bit older boomers typically don't do those things. But what was it that sort of kicked it off for you? Like, what was the light bulb moment for you to go like, oh, I need to have an online presence, and start building this stuff up?
Yeah, I think it was a 20-year arc, to be honest with you. Oh. It started when I started early on in my career and I was in a marketing role. I saw entrepreneurs early on have huge success, starting businesses, growing businesses. It was the .com bubble. That's how old we are. And most people don't remember it. And when I saw that, I realized the importance of having an online presence. And I thought to myself, well, I don't know that I'm ready for that. It was hard for me to kind of get out of my own skin. And
were you in the corporate world?
I was in the corporate world.
So it's like, we're kind of just like a cog in the machine.
Absolutely.
So it's like, in meetings, I was terrified to like speak up. I don't know about you.
Sure.
But yeah.
Especially to consider being an entrepreneur. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, there's risk. There are all these things. So what I decided to do instead, which sounds crazy, Eric, I'm like, you know what? I'll write a book.
Wow.
Because to me, I didn't have to be on stage. I didn't have to be in front of people. I wasn't on podcasts or giving TEDx's, right? So I decided to write a book, and I'm a disciplined guy. So I woke up at 5 o'clock every day. I wrote for an hour or hour and a half before work started. And I followed this process and ultimately self-published the book. It was back when, Amazon kind of had, it was actually before Amazon. It was a company called Create Space, which ultimately was acquired by Amazon, which is now their KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing Program. But the long and the short of it is I wrote a book, and by writing that book, it started to introduce me to this concept that it's more than just information. There needs to be a personality. There needs to be a brand. There needs to be an experience behind the content that you want to share, or no one's going to listen.
Yeah.
And that really was the jumping off point.
Right. I mean, dude, talk about jumping into the deep end as far as like building a personal brand, because there's a lot of different pieces to building a personal brand that we've come to find and notice and recognize, where some of you who aren't, some of those typical things is a book, right? It's not easy. So congratulations. I wish you brought it. We would have put it right there on the table. And a podcast or being a guest on podcasts. And then also help me out here. There's so many pieces to building a personal brand, building a community, creating
speaking
more content,
on stage, getting out there. Yeah.
So you decided to okay, I'm going to take this big behemoth task of writing a book. What I know you said it was because speaking and doing public
so
stuff.
To me, it was the safest, easiest thing I could do.
How did you know what to write about?
Well, so part of the backstory, as I'm seeing all these entrepreneurs being successful online, I wanted to build my own website and do something in marketing. And I went through that process. I'll save everybody a lot of time. And it wasn't showing up on Google. And I got really curious, like, why is it not showing up on Google? And how can I get it to show up? So I went down this rabbit hole of SEO, search engine optimization, and I wrote, and I figured it all out. I got top rankings for the website. And then I wrote a book called SEO Made Simple. It's now in its 13th edition. It's been out there forever.
Wow.
Yeah. Sold tens of thousands of copies.
Wow.
And thank you. And I wrote other books since then as well. Most recently, The 7-Figure Freelancer. But I did Blogging Made Simple. And I had all these books. And again, for me, it was safe because I didn't have to put myself out there. I didn't have to be on stage. I didn't have to be on a podcast. I didn't have to be on video on YouTube because I was very much introverted, but I had this entrepreneurial bug. So for me, it was finding the path of least resistance. And I enjoyed that for many years. I enjoyed the writing process, the publishing process, but to really create a personal brand, you can't hide, which I think is hard for a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, you work with people all the time. I know for a fact who want to grow that business, but they're not comfortable in front of a camera. They don't want to speak. They don't want to do certain things. And unfortunately, the only way, at least in my experience, to get better at it is to actually do it.
Yeah. It's funny because, in our world, it's a tired old analogy with the gym, but it's so true that you just got to get in there and do the reps in order to get results, because if you're constantly thinking about it you're not just going to manifest muscles. Right. So it's like, you're not going to manifest a brand for yourself. You're not going to be able to figure out how to get better or improve at any of those things without actually doing it. So yeah. So you figured out this is the niche, this is the expert, the industry that I'm going to lean into and become an expert in. How was it rocky in the beginning? How did it sort of unfold for you?
It's so interesting, like in hindsight, thinking about where I was and where I wanted to get to, you really learn just how don't want to say ignorant. That seems really harsh, but how inexperienced I was. I think that's a better way to talk about it. Because for me, like we were talking about earlier, I was a corporate guy. That was my shtick. Like back in the day, we wore suits to work, right? Right. And I had my briefcase and off I went. And that was where I wanted to be, and had a lot of amazing experiences, worked with some really great people, but always had this entrepreneurial bug. And I needed to transition out of the corporate world to becoming an entrepreneur. And more so than anything, it was a journey of self-discovery, of overcoming obstacles, overcoming my own limiting mindset to really a thrive in abundance mindset. I was always worried, well, what if, because I had kids at the time, how can I leave my job and try to make a go at doing SEO for people, doing marketing consulting, which is where I really started, because there's inherent risk. And what I learned later in life is you have to follow your passion no matter what the cost. And it gives me a new appreciation for artists and other people who are doing what they truly love, even though they're not making the money, because that's where success lives from my perspective. So a lot of it in the beginning was kind of overcoming that mindset challenge and really proving to myself that I could do it. And I developed a philosophy over the years. One of the things I talk about in my book, The 7-Figure Freelancer, which is this idea of crawl, walk, run. I don't know who said it, where I picked it up, but it has definitely been a model for me that has worked. And like you said, you got to do the reps. Yeah, but maybe you start with a 1 pound weight first, or a 3 pound. That's right. Don't hurt yourself. It's a good piece of advice. So that's what I did. So I, crawled. I started to do some consulting on the side, some freelancing on the side, taking on projects, building up my own confidence. And then from there, built the business.
What was the support system like? I know you're a married man, you're a family man, you're a father. What was it like as you were starting to investigate and eventually dove into this? Was your wife supportive? Were your kids like, what are you doing, Dad? Like, how old were your kids at the time? And like, what was that process like?
Yeah, they were young. So I don't know that they really knew what was going on. Quite honestly, I think most kids just, their parents leave for the day and come back, right? Or work upstairs and then come down for dinner. I don't know that they really have an understanding of what the jobs are, what we do. But what I can say is that 100% my wife was supportive. My wife's a teacher, has been a teacher her entire career. And in some ways, it was extremely easy for me. And this is going to sound trite, but, all I had to do was make money. She had the healthcare, which for us, especially with kids, was critical. And now, could I have made it work? I'm sure. But having someone in your corner who's supportive and who is not, who gives you that space really to find yourself and to experiment, I think is a game changer. Fortunately, that's all I've ever known. And she's always been supportive, even when I come up with crazy things like I have in the last year, investing in whiskey barrels and Bitcoin and all this other crazy stuff, movies. So thank God, right, that she has been part of my life for so long. And in hindsight, I don't know that I would have had the courage to kind of step out on my own with someone like that in my corner. I do think, as you and I both know, like over time, it is really important to find that group, find those individuals, people who are going to support you. And I always like to, remind people that when you share with someone, you're either having your burden, halving it, right? Or you're doubling it, meaning you're creating a burden for two people. So I think you really need to find those people that are willing to kind of split the burden with you and the challenges and listen and hear you out and help you move past that. And that really makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love that. I never heard that saying before or put that way, where you're either halving the burden for someone or you're adding on, you're piling onto someone else's burden. And it is sort of, I would say, seasonal, at least in my experience with my wife, where we were both breadwinners at some point.
Yeah.
We were dinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they call the dual income, no kids for a long time. And then at some point, and I'm curious about your story too. When I left corporate, she wholly trusted when I was like, I'm not going back.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you when you were like, yeah, I don't want to go back? And what gave you the courage to do it?
Yeah. Well, I had like this delicate dance with corporate because the first time I went out because it's really what I wanted to do. And I needed to prove to myself that I could put food on the table and not have to rely on big, bad corporate America to make that happen. And that was a great experience. I did that for about 3 years. And then after 3 years, I really questioned myself and said, can I do this? It was a lot of work. I mean, we know as entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, your sales, marketing, IT, customer service, project right? You're doing all of it. It's a lot. It's a mental burden. As an entrepreneur, I would say, truthfully, I probably haven't really been on a vacation in 13 years. Why? Because if you're not working, you're thinking about work. You always have to be available in some capacity. That's not for everybody. Yeah. I'm not complaining. I love it. I love what I do. But it is a different kind of mindset. So after 3 years, I threw in the towel. I had a very small exit, long story. And I decided to go and consult for another company that turned into a full-time job, which I wasn't necessarily looking for, but it made sense at the time. I did that for about 4 years. And then after that, the company I was with was getting ready to sell. And they basically said to the executive team, your time is limited. And at that point, I said, you know what? I think I want to try this entrepreneurial thing again, which was kind of ballsy, from my perspective, just because I kind of decided it really wasn't for me, but there's always been this part of me that wanted to do it. So the long and the short of it is I just kind of, found a place to hang my shingle, started grinding, doing what I needed to do. And then fortunately, the business grew and I found some really good people to help me continue to grow the business.
Dude, I love that. Cutting your teeth, right? And then I'm guessing tripping and falling a couple times and then going back. And we've talked about that. Sort of the struggle of going back and then like, because you got a taste, right? You got a taste of freedom and then you went back for a few years.
Yeah.
But thankfully you made your way back and started to build this. My question though, with building your brand, deciding to do that, because it's truly like building two businesses when you have your SEO company and building that clientele and all the marketing there. Yeah. It's a completely different animal to build marketing for Michael Fleischner and content from Michael and stages and doing all. So how did you handle that? How did you break that down?
Yeah. I think part of it was a decision, Erik. I see so many companies, and look, we do work for companies throughout the world, actually. And so I get to see a lot of different examples of how companies do what they do. And the one thing I, at some point, made the discernment around was I do not want to be the business. I don't want people calling and saying, I only want to work with Michael, at least not for the SEO business. Big Fin SEO is really all about helping companies look good online, whether it's search engine optimization, paid search, website development. Michael Fleischner doesn't need to be the face of that business. I need to run the business as a CEO and take responsibility for the business and for the people on my team. But I don't need to be the face of that business. And I think by making that discernment, it freed me. Because now it's the business. It's Big Fin SEO. It's not Michael Fleischner. Yeah. And that allowed me to pursue many of these other things that I'm into. And for a long time, I was really focused on this journey of mine, right? The TEDx speech that I did was all about the journey from corporate America to the world of freelancing and where that has led me. And I couldn't have shared that journey with anyone if I was so consumed with my business, with Big Fin SEO. And, a lot of it too is just creating the systems and processes. So I'm aware 100% of everything that goes on in my business. But again, I don't have to be the brand. Big Fin SEO is the brand. And then personally, I'm focused more on the things that I'm passionate about, the experiences I want to have. And that is my own personal brand. I think they say authenticity is really the highest vibration you can have. And I agree with that, because I always tell people we're here for a very short time. So you're going to spend that going into a job that you hate, doing work that just makes you sick to your stomach, or are you going to start to follow your passion? Again, crawl, walk, run. So that's how I've looked at branding. It's the corporation, the company has its own brand. Michael Fleischner has his own brand. Sometimes those overlap, but they don't have to.
Yeah. So so the first step for you was sort of like that mental separation of, hey, there's Big Fin, and then there's Michael Fleischner. But the execution of the content, so you have a TED Talk, you have a book, right? So those are things that, yes, could be very separate from the company, right? So you didn't necessarily, and I wanted to get into the TED Talk, because those are two big pieces of a personal brand that you accomplish. Like, check that box, right? A lot of people don't ever get there, myself included. So it's like, how did you think about the alignment of the TED Talk? Like, did you struggle with, man, should I be talking about something that's going to feed the SEO business? Should I, because that there's going to be a good amount of people that are going to be interested in you after that. And you have to funnel them into something. So what was your plan and strategy behind that?
So I think my philosophy is a little different than what most people, or how most people may think about it. To me, it's all about leverage. Because being in the online space, we know it's all about online reputation. You are what Google says you are, period, full stop. And that's something we talk to clients about all the time. I know you do, as you build brands for individuals and businesses. And because of that, I feel like the concept around personal brand needs to be aligned with what you're passionate about in the moment. And there is less intentionality about the lead funnel. So when I was thinking about TEDx, I wasn't thinking about, okay, how do I put myself out there, generate leads, tell people to, on Insta, just message me X, Y, and Z, and I'll send you my free download. Smarter people probably do that, and they're making gazillions of dollars doing it. But for me, it wasn't about that. I wanted to tell my story, and I wanted to connect with people who are in corporate jobs that they either don't like, or maybe they like them, but they've always had this burning passion to do something else, and they're scared, they're not sure what to expect. And my goal ultimately was to build a community, which I started building around this 7-figure freelancer, and to share the story. That was it. I didn't overthink it. And I think that's why, for me, the message resonated with so many people, and why so many people want to read the 7-figure freelancer and understand how does it work, and can I do it, and build their own, faith and confidence around that. That was the goal. Now, of course, you could look at that and say, well, that was stupid, Michael. What a great opportunity. You're on stage, you're reaching, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Why aren't you driving them to your business? And again, it goes back to what I said. To me, it's leverage. So if I want to get into a project, it could be any project. Let's talk about the movie. Well, someone's going to Google me. And when they Google me, they're going to see that I have a TEDx and a book and a business, multiple businesses, blah, 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 blah. They're going to want to meet with me and have that conversation. I feel like that creates a wider net and more opportunity. Again, people can agree to disagree or take a different approach to it, but that's been my approach. And what I find is I'm learning new things every day. I'm expanding who I am. I'm creating meaningful connections with people I otherwise never would have come across. And that's what fills me. That's what fulfills me. And that's why I've taken that approach and haven't tried to overanalyze it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think a lot of us get caught up in analysis by paralysis, right? So yes, ideally, there would have been an opportunity like, oh, I'm going to do this TED Talk. It's going to sync up with my book. The book is the same name as this. I've seen people do that where the book is the exact same name as the podcast. The podcast is the same as the TED Talk. And they're like, whoa, how did you do all that? Right?
Yeah.
But there's also something powerful about and something to be said about just going with the flow and worrying less about the nuances because it's going to trip you up. It's going to cause analysis by paralysis and then you're not going to do the thing versus what you just said, which is you cast a wider net and you create truly an ecosystem around, for the internet so that they can see your personal brand in different channels, different environments, different. That's why I've gotten away from this, and you could share with me how you've tackled this. Remember a few years ago, it was very, very common to see thought leaders just walking with their phone. And go, here's my thoughts. And they're talking with the phone. I've stopped doing that. I used to do that all the time. And Jamie actually used to reach out to me and go, dude, I just saw that thing you posted, that live thing you did. She's like, let's talk. Like it would always inspire people.
Interesting.
When they see you do it. So was that ever a part of your sort of personal brand ecosystem, putting out live stuff, just walking and talking? Yeah,
I did a lot of that because I'm not really technically adept at splicing and bringing in different, and especially now with Insta, people's, attention span is so limited.
Hollywood production.
Right. You need to be changing things. And I just, if I have something to share, I share it. But I do it because I want to do it. We talked about podcasts. I had the digital marketing podcast for many episodes. And at some point it wasn't fun anymore. So I stopped.
Yeah.
Like that's simple.
Yeah.
I've got a really good friend. She wrote a book called Living on Purpose. Amy Wong, really good content. And Amy's thing is don't think it out, feel it out. And that's something I've been trying to do more, especially, over the last year or two, because we want to make it about other people in the sense that, hey, if I create this content, people are going to really gravitate towards it. I'll be able to monetize it. Selfishly, I'm more about me. I'm more about, hey, that was really interesting. I learned something. I want to share it with people. I'm going to share it. And whatever comes of that, comes of that. I am more fulfilled by someone saying, hey, I saw your TED Talk and which happened after the TED Talk, which was really fulfilling and rewarding, where people said, you know what, I'm going through the exact same thing right now. And it was so encouraging to hear you say that you landed on your feet or you found your passion or whatever the case might be. To me, that's the money. That's the money, because we can always make money. We can always bring on more clients. We could always sell more stuff. But if you really want to feel fulfilled, you need to follow that passion and ultimately do what feels right.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for saying that. Because I'm in 100% alignment and agreement with that because, and I posted something recently about this too. It's like just reflecting on the year or our summer, it's like, I wasn't there at that particular job or that site because I had to, because I was obligated to. I was there because I love that, what I'm doing there. I love my clients. I love what my clients are doing. And at the end of the day, because money wasn't motivating me, it's become more fulfilling in terms of lifestyle, because now, and dude, don't get me wrong. And anybody who's listening to this, I was there. I'm sure you were there, where it had to be about the money. You would take those terrible clients. You would do the things that you didn't want to do, just like you do in corporate. And you'd have to do that in building your own business. But at some point, you're hoping to break through the threshold and you can begin to fire some clients and or be very selective with who you're bringing on. So you want to speak a little bit about that? I know you've had, you've got star clients and then you have the not so. stars.
Absolutely.
This is my Trump.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Erik. And I'm glad you're bringing it up because, this is part of the journey, right? I remember just trying to get my first couple of clients and how much pressure there was. And I was willing to do things for almost no money, but I had to survive. And that's that survival mindset. Mm-hmm. And there is that minimum threshold. You got to pay your bills. Whatever your monthly nut is, the money's got to come from somewhere. You got to grind. There's no other way to do it. And look, some people are lucky and they can manifest whatever they want. They think about it, on a mountaintop. And there is some value to that. I'm not trying to minimize that.
For sure.
But when you're under pressure, then law of adaptation, like you gotta really grind until something's coming in and then you can adjust to the next level. And that's how I was in the beginning when I left corporate America. And that was not easy. That was a difficult time, but it builds character for sure, grist for the mill. And it helps you discern who you like to work with, who you don't like to work with. I have to say now, like we had a recent incident with a client. It's kind of a long story, but this is a client I think very highly of. We love working with them. They're amazing people, actually local client. And when this thing happened, like my stomach was in knots. Like I was really, really upset. And it was an incident with a third party. It really wasn't even anything that we did per se, but you develop such a connection over the years with clients who you want to work with, who you do good work for, and who are very receptive to that. So to your point, like that's where you want to get. You want to get in a situation where if something doesn't really work out for your client, you actually care.
Yeah.
Right? Because there were many clients I was just like, I couldn't wait until they went away. Like it's right. It's a hard situation to be in.
Yeah. A little bit of Schadenfreude. The Germans, of course, leave it up to them to have a word for the enjoyment from other people's misery.
Exactly.
I think that's the definition.
Yes.
But yeah, for sure. There's times where as you're starting out and you're building your business and your reputation, hopefully, you have to sort of eat dirt sometimes just because you don't want to tarnish a reputation that's like in its early gestation stage. Yeah. But then hopefully if you're doing it right and you're eating enough humble pie, then you get to that point where you actually are working with people you care about because your stomach was in knots because you actually gave a crap.
Right. And I also think too, the key thing to focus on is, and again, maybe it's easy for me to say, but I feel like I've always had this philosophy. You have to focus on the long arc. It can't be now. Yeah. With this particular incident, as soon as it happened, I said, look, we're at fault. We're taking full responsibility. We're going to make you whole. End of story. Now, whether they continue as a client, which I hope they do because we really like them, or not is entirely up to them. I cannot control their actions, but I have the long term in mind. We have our reputation to be mindful of. And quite honestly, ethically and morally, we want to do the right thing because that gets recognized. People want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And that's the way to do it. So I'm not all about, and again, we're in a very fortunate position. I'm not like, oh my God, I got to make payroll this month. And if I don't somehow make this situation work, I'm in trouble. So we do have that flexibility and that cushion and that benefit. But you really do have to think about the long term when you're building a brand because you're not going to get that immediate feedback. It's like people who get an opportunity to speak and they say, well, I charge 10 grand to present. And let's say it's an association. They're like, well, we don't have 10 grand. We have, I don't know, $1,000 and we'll pay for your hotel. And most people are going to say, forget it. Right. Especially because, you and I have worked with a lot of these speakers. And the question is this something that can benefit you long term? Right. And if the answer is yes, and you're going to be happy up there on stage delivering whatever message you're delivering, do it. Like, why are you so concerned? And I see this over and over again. And again, maybe I've got it all wrong, but it has to be in alignment with where you are today, where you want to be. And if it moves you forward, there's value in that. And I think people need to pause and really think about, putting the wood in the fire before expecting the heat from the fire to warm them up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm so curious. We haven't talked about this, and you and I have spent hours. We have a workout group together. I highly recommend go check it. You might see Michael and myself working out if you come to F3 workouts. Anyway, we spoke about this at length in terms of building brands and what we do for our clients. But I've never really asked you your core values. Well, your companies, I'm sure you have, and then also your personal ones. So if you could share some of those and expand on why they're your values.
Yeah, sure. So, I think something that's really important to me is this idea of fair exchange and abundance exchange. And a lot of my life is really focused around this. I feel like there are many people who, it's funny, we talk about them at F3. I won't use the vernacular we use there, but there are a lot of people out there struggling. They're having hard times. Life is not always easy. And, I think in those situations, it's important to reach out to people and support them. And to me, that's fair exchange, meaning we're here for a reason. If you're in a good place and you can lift someone up, there's fair exchange there. You're going to get benefit. They're going to get benefit. There's fair exchange. And then there's also this idea of abundance exchange, which I've really carried over into the business, which is you may only be paying me for X, Y, and Z, but we're also going to deliver A, B, and C. Yeah. And I think that's why we have such a great relationship with our clients. They do a little more, we do a little more. It raises everyone up. But I think in terms of core values, I'm big on trust. I'm big on open and honest communication. And I'm big on community, more so now than I think I was earlier in my life. I was very insular. I was very me. And it left me kind of empty and unfulfilled. So I really value community, working together, trusting one another. Those are some of the core values that are near and dear to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the version that I've met, the Michael Fleischner that I know, he's got it together. He's got an abundant mindset. He's well aware about building companies, his own brand, a lot of things. But there for sure was a version of you that was struggling to get there. So I'm like, what were some of the mental hurdles and books that you read? Or, for me, it was Hal Elrod's Savers that sort of broke the sound barrier for me, because he did all the hard work. He took what all the successful people were doing, all the common traits that they did at 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen overnight for sure. But it was super helpful. Was there something like that where Hal's thing or somebody else's thing where it's like little by little you chipped away at this old version and became the new version of you?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up. For me, it was self-confidence for sure. I did not see myself the way other people saw me. So I think there were two things. One is doing that work, and I'm still doing that work. There were a lot of things in my childhood that I needed to process and work through, and I never developed that skill. And unless you really find someone you can work with, who you trust, who you can go back to those moments and really sit with them, I think there's an emotional component that everyone needs to work through, because no one has a perfect life where every day is a perfect experience. And we carry a lot of those things with us, whether we realize it or not. So I think that's one thing, is that self-work. I think the other is having a morning routine. For me, game changer. I spend at least, now I know actually a billionaire who spends hours every morning working on himself, but he's a billionaire. He has hours to work on himself. That's not me. I got to go to work. I have responsibilities. Not to say that my buddy doesn't, but, I got really deliberate about my morning routine, whether that's doing meditation, whether it's doing yoga, affirmations, all those sorts of things, which seem cheeky. They actually work.
Yeah.
But you can't do it once and expect it's your gym analogy all over again. It is doing something consistently that feels good. And we know working out together. So Erik and I, in case you guys don't know this, I mean, we're in the best shape of our life. But even working out together, right? Like when we started, man, it was hard, and you hurt for day. I still hurt for a couple of days after some of our workouts,
especially if there's a break. It took a week or two off.
Exactly, getting back. But it's the consistency, and it's doing it over and over and over again. And don't confuse. A lot of times people think it's insanity. You're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But what people need, the lens they need to look through, in my opinion, is cumulative appreciation. Right? Things appreciate over time if you do them consistently over time. If you're lifting weights and you're upping your weights over time, you're going to get bigger muscles. So it's not insane to do the same thing over and over. It's insane not to expect results. So again, it's individualized based on what you're working on, what you're trying to accomplish. But I definitely feel that morning routine, Erik, definite game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anyone who doesn't or hasn't adopted that yet, like you said, to kind of take that, doing the same thing over and over is the definition of insanity, right? And expecting different results. If you're stuck like I was, and it sounds like you were, in the corporate sort of grind where you lived for that weekly paycheck, but on your own time, you could do whatever you want. So for me, it was debauchery. It was smoking. It was drinking. It was partying, watching TV till 3 o'clock in the morning, even though I know I had to go to work the next day, and then potentially calling sick, or just things like that, where you will make money and survive and have a good life staying in that system. But if you don't ever break out of it, you're never going to become this person that you have the potential to be, right? Because it's freaking hard, dude. It's hard. And it takes a long, long, long time to break the old habits if you're stuck, if you developed these habits. So what were people, especially your wife, your family, as you started to evolve, what was their reaction and what was their feedback?
Yeah. Well, I think before I respond to that, I think really the key is people look at success, but they don't give you credit for all the work you had to do to get there.
Yeah. They just look at, what's that saying? People are celebrated on stage for you know what I'm saying?
It's like for who they are, but not necessarily the work that they did. To get there. Anyway, And I was thinking T. Harv Eker had a presentation or a book many years ago, maybe Millionaire Mindset, something like that. But he was saying, your level of success is directly correlated to the person you've become. That's deep. So wait, so you mean I can't just be insta famous and earn $1 million? I have to actually be that person. Right. So I think that is, again, a shift in mindset. It's a different lens, and you have to work towards that. Part of the way to get there, we're talking about people and how they react to your growth. Part of that is hanging around different people. Right? Like you and I are hanging out. We've got successful businesses. We're helping lots and lots of people. We're out there. We're creating value. As opposed to, hanging out with a bunch of guys where you get together twice a week at a bar. Like, I can tell you who's going to be successful just based on who your friends are. It's just like another buddy of mine, he said, I can tell you your credit score based on the front of your house and how clean or dirty your car is.
Oh, wow.
On the inside.
On the inside, yes. Right. It's so true.
Yeah. It's uncanny, actually.
Yeah, it tells a lot, for sure.
It really does. So, again, you kind of talk about people and their reactions. I think the key is identifying those people who will continue to support you. Obviously, my wife has been incredibly supportive, and family has been supportive. But my friend group has changed pretty drastically. Like, I've got a really good friend. I share an office with him, and we've been friends for a long time. And I feel like he always has my best interest in mind. And I'm like, I want more of those people. And I've spent the last, I'd say 5 years, really expanding my friend group and finding out who will be there. And I know it's interesting too, not to spend too much time on F3, but I think it's so important. You know, I said to you, so this is we work out outside and all year long. And in Jersey, it gets incredibly cold.
Oh my gosh, 22 degrees this morning.
Right. And I remember you saying to me, Erik, like in January, these are the guys I want to be with.
Yeah.
Because it's a different caliber. Like if you're hanging out with the guys who are waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and working out outside. In 19-degree temperature,
rolling around in the snow and the ice,
it's crazy. And it elevates you and your own persona. And that's the way to do it. You got to get around those people and you have to be in the right rooms. I was recently at a networking group with I mentioned the Bellwether Alliance. And the guy who runs it, he said to a room of, I'd call it 40, 50 people, he said, how many people here own their own businesses? My hand went up. I looked around. Everyone's hand went up. And I had a realization. I've never been in a room like this before. Never before in my entire life. And I've had my own business now for over a decade. And it just drives home that idea that you are the people you hang out with. Sure. So if you're in a situation where you're thinking about, I really need to elevate my personal brand, I really need to get out there, I need to do more things, find the people who are out there doing more things and have those brands that you really want to be or resonate with and spend more time with them or consuming their experience, right? Their products, their whatever. And don't be afraid to invest in yourself also. I think that's really the key.
Yeah. I mean, it is key. It's a key component for sure. Being around the right people, surrounding yourself with people who, you know, for that workout group, F3 Nation, by the way, big plug to them, go to that website, that if you want to become physically fit and have a certain sort of standard upheld for yourself, then you surround yourself with what you want to look like. Yeah. Right? Same thing with the mental aspect, right? There's certain types of people that are, they're cut from a different cloth. Like people who own businesses successfully. Now, you could be a business owner that's been doing it for a year or two. I would still say you got
a long way to go.
Your teeth got to get kicked in for sure. You know, and when you get to that certain point, 10 years, I mean, I'm at 7, so I can only imagine, you know, 10, 12, you know, it's tough. You know, I had a client who, when I met them, they were at 5 million and they were only, I think, about 5 years in. Okay. And then they went to 22 million very quickly. Wow. And staffed up, did all the things. Amazing. Saw their growth, was a part of it. I celebrated it with them. Dude, they folded the company. Yeah. Wow. It's so sad, but it just is a lesson for me that, like, wow, even if you can make it beyond, right, that threshold and you can make, you know, multi-millions of dollars. Yeah. You're still vulnerable, but it takes a certain mindset because they're not down. They're not done. Like, okay, I spoke to them after. They're like, we're building the next thing. Yeah. We're going on the next thing. We're excited about that because you start to develop other interests as you have, where then now that company, like Big Fin, SEO, is running on its own to a degree. Yeah. And now you're exploring new interests, which now you're able to invest in and say Big Fin went away. You're like, I got all these other things going on, right? That's right. So, I mean, I'm up in the ivory tower telling people this is a cool thing that you're eventually going to be and do. Right. But it does take little by little incremental steps. I wish I could remember the saying where it's like people are celebrated on stage for blah, blah, blah. But all right, we'll have to Google we'll find it. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. In the show notes. Yeah. But dude, so what's big, what's new, what's next for Big Fin, for Michael Fleischner, 2025? Yeah, wow. Well, 2025 is going to be an incredible year. With a little luck, the movie we've been working on will come out called The Strange. So keep your eyes and ears open for it. Sounds like sci-fi. It's a little sci-fi-ish. Yeah. Or you definitely got to be an extra. Get some
I'm
makeup.
so excited. Can't wait. So that's going to happen. But, I think for Big Fin, which I'm really excited about, is we're starting to do more work with multi-location businesses, which is really kind of nuanced. So even if we're working with a dermatologist or electricians or whatever the case might be, the really successful companies have many locations, and trying to tie it all together under a branded house, as we like to say, as opposed to a house of brands. Or vice versa, it's challenging, it's exciting. We're doing extremely good work for them. So I'm expecting really big things for Big Fin SEO and my team in 2025. And then I've got a bunch of personal projects going on. Today is Giving Tuesday. I know we're going to be dating the podcast because of this, but I'm doing some charity work with the Book Bank Foundation, which is based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm looking to do more work with them. They do some amazing work with shelters and people on the streets, and just, helping the forgotten people who are out there who really need help. Even socks, believe it or not, they give out. I mean, incredible, foundation. But I think doing that charity work, I think kind of experimenting. I mean, as we're sitting here, crypto is exploding. I actually participate in some mining operations, which is all new to me, all new vocabulary, and it's exciting. So, a lot of these smaller projects, Erik, are just because I have a curiosity and a passion to learn more. Will any of them make me, a billionaire? Probably not. I mean, that would be nice. But honestly, if they didn't make a cent, I would still be really happy, because they're new, they're exciting. It's what my joy is at the moment. And I think there's going to be more of that in 2025, where there's something I don't even know exists yet that will pique my interest. And I think the key is to do more yesing and less knowing.
Oh, so 25 will be a year of yes for you?
Yes, it will be. That was a great setup. I know we did not rehearse that, but good. Definitely a great setup. Okay. How about you? What's the big idea in 2025?
I don't know if I share this with you. So last year, 2024, this current year that we're in, it was all about, I always like two words to theme my years. Okay. So this year was reduction, meaning like in a culinary sense. Oh, sure. Reducing an ingredient to its most potent.
Love it.
Drop.
Yeah.
So that was critical in terms of our business. Really worked. And then relationships. So I'm winning on both columns.
You killed it.
Yeah. And then this year is really powerful. It's going to definitely move the needle within me. And that is going to be partnerships. Okay. So bigger and better, right? With others. And then the second is doing all of my content, or a large majority of the content, and building businesses as well that glorify God. So I'm really into my faith journey, has been off the charts this year. And that is my mission now, brother, is to just like because building personal brands is very egocentric. And my biggest struggle was with, how do I do that and still dig into my faith, right? Still glorify God. And then I kind of think I cracked the code. So I'm like, how do I share this with others? Yeah. Because there's always going to be like someone a couple steps behind that trying to do what you did, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. But anyway, thanks for asking, dude. Yeah. That's huge. I can't wait. But if someone can't wait to reach out to you, because you got a lot you can share. Yeah. How you got onto TED, we didn't even get into that. I'd love to continue this conversation on a part 2. But
shout out to TEDx Wilmington.
Huge.
Dr. Dan Young.
That's a big win. Congratulations. Big shout out. So if anybody wants to reach out and talk to you about that, anybody needs SEO advice, you've come in literally to this studio and we've had conversations with my clients about how to solve their problems. What's the best way to reach you? And how can they get in touch?
I think you'll like this answer.
Yeah.
Google me. Just Google me, Michael Fleischner. And that's not ego. That's a decade of making that my craft. But certainly LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. Yeah. And I produce a newsletter through LinkedIn. We have thousands of subscribers called Freelance Friday. I encourage you guys to sign up for that. It's free. And I share freelance tips, strategies, and a bunch of ideas to help you along the way to grow your own business, grow your own personal brand, and be more successful.
Yeah. Love it, brother. And love you, man. Thank you for coming in and
great interview.
And jamming with me.
Yeah, loved it.
Fun, brother.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Be Your Brand. If you were inspired or you learned something new today, please give us a like or a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. If you want to learn more about how to build your YouTube channel, your personal brand or podcast, hit us up at info@onairbrands.com. That's info@onairbrands.com so that we can find ways that we can help you. I'm Erik Cabral, and I hope that I added value in your life today.